Hello there, I am Man in Yellow and welcome to a series where I will be doing high rank game reviews of other players. When I say high rank game reviews, I mean games between two players who usually finish or are around Sum of All Fears 2 or higher, because I would say if you are below that, you are not really a high rank player. I will do one game per video and I will try to explain things such as why players make certain moves, why the phobies they bring are good or bad in my opinion, what I might have done differently, and so on, whatever might come up during the matches. The point of this is to give a better idea of which phobies are used where and why, along with trying to explain the thought patterns and strategies that high rank players might use in matches, depending on which map they are on and what the opponent might be doing. Before I begin, I just want to say I've looked through a lot of games, I've skimmed a lot of the high rank players' accounts, and I would say around every 10th game or so, they have a game that actually seems enjoyable to play, which I think is, that's not a point of this video, that's another thing entirely, but that is quite annoying, I think, because that is a bad sign for the game. Almost all of the games that people are playing are either ones where it's a quest game, it is a player who is way higher ranked than the other one, or higher stress level, so they just completely demolish the other one, or it's a game where someone has a specific card that is very good on that map and the other just can't answer it. For example, Billy or many other things that you all know which phobies are broken. There's Billy, Dr. Holiday, couple other ones that are very, very disgusting, and the other player just can't answer them. Could also be a Frosty combo or something like that. Anyway, there's just so many games that just end because one player has a overpowered phobia and the other can't answer it, either because of the map or because of collection issues, and then there's the stress level issue. So I think that's kind of an issue that the developers have to look at, but again, that is beside the point of this video. In this first one, we will be looking at a game between DarkScyther and 8kakashi8. I might have butchered that, and let's just get right into it. Alright, as you can see, this match is on exponential decay and DarkScyther will be going first here. And we get a snowball plus 1 key opener. This is a very common opener on exponential decay. You see this a lot here. The other openers that you commonly see are either Droney, double 1 key, or it is Murderwing with a 1 key, or it's 2 or 3 1 keys into something larger. Those are the common ones. And then sometimes you see Poison Ivy, because that is also a pretty decent opener here. The reason why Snowball is good as an opener is because you often fight over this middle point here. That is often what both players are going back and forth over. And so taking it for free early on is pretty nice. It's essentially like getting a free 1 key for taking the middle point. And that's usually something you can do on most maps, but the reason why it's extra good on a map like this is because you are very rarely going to be hitting an enemy with a snowball from your vault. That is often the reason why you want to keep snowball in your vault instead of using it as an opener on a lot of large maps. It's because you can move out here and instantly hit something. But on this map that happens fairly rarely. It does still happen sometimes, but it's not a situation you encounter that often. So just using it as an opener is pretty good. Compared to the Murderwing opener, the disadvantage is that you cannot fly over here and take this point, but instead you get to take the middle point for free, so that's kind of whatever. It's like a fair trade, I guess. And from Kakashi, we are seeing the Murderwing 1 key and another 1 key. And this is a fairly normal opener. This is what player 1 often does. You've just changed it to player 2 and put in another 1 key. And this is pretty good here because the Murderwing is capable of one-hitting the Sargassum. So the Sargassum can't go down and take this point for free, which is often what you want your 1 key to do, because the Murderwing would just move over and kill it and it wouldn't really be that good for you, because then maybe the Murderwing walks over and takes the point after and you are in a very bad position. So the Murderwing makes a lot of sense here. If there wasn't a Sargassum, they may have gone for either a jammy fish or a tooth fairy instead. So the murdering makes a lot of sense. It also helps threaten this, and it's just a good phobia on this map because it's a mobile flyer, which you really like on maps with a lot of obstacles and abyss tiles. The other phobies that we saw here are tickles and cowbell. These are sort of the two combat tank phobies of the 1 keys. They are very good at taking points early on because they have a lot of health, but they still have attack power, so they can defend themselves, but they are very hard to push off early on. So you can often take points for free with them, or just make the opponent have to like deal with them while you're doing other stuff, so you sort of overwhelm them with things they have to do. And that is why they are very popular as openers. You also have something like Boomer, which would be more tanky, but that doesn't have attack power, so that's why it's not commonly used as an opener. On maps like these, there are a few ones where you can do Boomer, but usually these are way more common as openers if you want tanky phobies, because Boomer can't fight back, which makes it way easier to just gang up at it and kill it. And also sometimes people just won't kill Boomer, and then you are essentially one phobie down for a lot of the match, which can be very annoying. So these are very common 1 keys to see here. What DarkScyther does here is something I really like. They bring a Ginsting with a 1 key, and the reason why I really like this is because it's fairly aggressive. This is like not a high tempo play, but it's good enough to contest the board very easily. So this Ginsting is very threatening for all of Kakashi's phobies, but especially the Murderwing is what you want it to be threatening towards, because the Murderwing is kind of annoying right now. And then you bring a Razor Mouth, which is both good for fighting, and it's able to take this point without getting one hit by the Murderwing, which is rather important, which this Sarcasm can't. So that's pretty nice. Also, the combination of the Ginsting with the Snowball. On this turn it can't, but on following turns it will be able to threaten this Murderwing, which is very, very nice, because then you can start forcing the Murderwing back and you can maybe take points for free and stuff like that. Assuming Kakashi doesn't do anything, which they are obviously going to do, but it's still a good combination for like sniping enemies early on. Ginsting is just generally a very good phobie for bullying smaller phobies. That's kind of what it's designed to do. Bringing Snowball to the top is also interesting, because you could choose to hit the enemy Snowball here if you want to. That's not that great, but I'll explain that in a second. Why some might do that and why it can sometimes be fine. But what we just see here is a Stabby. The reason why the Stabby makes a lot of sense is because it's a slow high stat phobie here, and we aren't really entering combat. In addition to that, this Ginsting alone is not going to walk up and hit the Murderwing, because if it did, it would take more damage than it's dealing, which you don't really like. Like, let's assume the Ginsting goes over here and hits this Murderwing. Then the Murderwing either hits it with a big attack and moves back after healing from the attack, in which case you have taken way more damage than you've dealt because of the heal and the higher damage. Or they end up just double hitting you and they move in with the tickles and also hit, and they are like blocking you from moving in while also moving the Stabby up, which you also don't really like. That's also bad for you. So they are unlikely to go in here with the Ginsting, so you can just go for something slow since there's no reason to really back up your board right now. And then you take with the Cowbell up here, and it's fine if the opponent hits the Cowbell with the Murderwing, because you will just use the Cowbell to take the middle point, and then it won't have mattered at all. The Cowbell will still have fulfilled its purpose, so you don't really care about that. And they of course get to bank a lot of keys because they went for Stabby. So now they have 8 keys saved up. We just see a Stabby mirroring them here. And that it makes a lot of sense, because the opponent brought a high stat slow phobie, then you do the same thing. That's often how that goes. And we also see something interesting, which is the Sarcasm moving up here, along with the Snowball being moved up. Instead of hitting the Cowbell here, which doesn't really matter to do, like I explained before, it will just be sacrificed anyway if you do that, so there's no real point to doing that. Instead they move the Snowball over here, so that it can threaten this Murderwing, like I also mentioned earlier that they could do. And what that does is it allows you to put the Sargassum forward, because if the Murdering moves up to one hit the Sargassum, then these two would move in and kill the Murdering. At least that's the idea here. And you also just have the Sargassum forward, which can threaten the Murdering. So that makes a lot of sense, this play. Ends up not working out for them, but we will see that here. But it's still a good idea, at least. It's a good, concept of a play, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure what you would actually call that, but it's good strategy is what I'm getting at. It ends up not working out because of this Hero 2.0 with a 1 key coming in, and that they are also taking the middle here. Hero 2.0 is very good in this situation and just on this map in general. And the reason why they can no longer go in and kill the Murdering here is because their Ginsting would end up here, and then the Snowball would end up somewhere out here, right, to hit this. And if they do that, then the Hero 2.0 will, first of all, just be able to easily kill the Snowball if they wanted to. But there is also some chance that the Hero 2.0 is going to move up in some way, and they are going to push your phobia into the pit, which is very risky. You don't want your Ginsting to just die to one ability. That would be a very, very bad play. Especially early on, that would be extremely bad for you, because that can just be game losing. Being 4 keys behind very early in a game matters a lot more than losing 4 keys near the middle or later stages of a game, because you have less keys available to you. So what Kazaki could do here, if the DarkScyther killed the Murdering, not Snowball, but if they kill the Murdering with the Ginsting and put the Ginsting here, they could put a 1 key behind the Ginsting, and then they could push at it with their Hero 2.0 to make it go into this Abyss tile. And that would, like I said, be very, very, very bad for DarkScyther. So this Hero 2.0 prevents you from killing the Murdering, and then the Murdering killed the Sargassum for free, while you are also moving forward with the Tickles, which will be able to hit you or hit the opponent if they move forward. So, makes a lot of sense. And Hero 2.0 is just extremely good on this map. This is one of the best maps in the game for Hero 2.0. It is extremely nice here. And we also see DarkScyther bring it. The reason why Hero 2.0 is so good is because it's just fantastic on all maps where there are a lot of Abyss tiles. It's also good on lava tile maps if you can push them into lava tiles. But anywhere where you can push enemies, or at least constrict their movement a lot because of Abyss tiles, it is a very, very strong phobia. It's also just good for a lot of whatever you want to call combat over time, or damage over time, where you sort of hit the opponent and you just push them away, and then you move back and you do the same thing again when the ability comes up. I guess you could call it battle of attrition or whatever. It's very good for that kind of combat too, which is very common on this map. So it just makes a ton of sense for Hero 2.0 to be brought here. What DarkScyther did is he just killed the 1 key and brought his own Hero 2.0, which makes some sense. I would say that he should have just used 1 hit from the Ginsting and 1 hit from the Snowball, and then he should have moved the Ginsting back here and put the Hero 2.0 on this spot instead, because having this further into the map is better, since it constricts the opponent's movement a lot more, which is kind of important to do. And currently you are going to it's not going to happen here, but a lot of the time a player would just move up here and push you, which would be very annoying. So maybe that would have been better, because then you wouldn't get pushed on as many phobies, and you would also be in a better position after you get pushed, in my opinion. So I would probably have done that, but that's a very, very small change to do. So it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, Hero 2.0 is always being used on this map pretty much. It's very, very strong. And now we see Kakashi move forward with all of his phobies, and he puts a Le Shovel out here, which is very good. You can use this to position your Hero 2.0 in better ways, which will allow you to push them off the edge and hit into Abyss tiles, or can just create better pushers. It's also just extremely good with a lot of phobies, the shovel is just a broken phobia. You will see it in a very large amount of high ranking games, often on both sides, and especially on small maps. It's a little bit less common on large maps, but it's still used almost all the time there. And it's just a very powerful phobia. It's probably the best utility phobia in the game, maybe outside of Gravedigger. They're kind of on the same power level. I would say Shovel is a bit more powerful, but it's a bit less utility. It's better because like the ability is for combat, which you are always doing, whereas you don't always need to use Gravedigger. But both of them are very, very powerful utility phobies, and the Shovel has extremely good stats for being a utility phobia, and it's also just very, very cheap, so it's a very, very strong one. And there are a lot of different options to use with it. You can use it with Blondie, you can use it with Kaboom, you can use it with big AoEs, you can use it with like Noxious and stuff like that. There's just so many things you can do with it that it's very, very, very often used, because you get to just do whatever you want, but do it a bit better. And we also see there are stabby move up here, and the reason why they're able to do that is because the Hero 2.0 can't reach them. There's a block in the way. Like I said before, if they had put the Hero 2.0 here, they wouldn't be able to do that. So that would have prevented them from moving forward a little bit, which might have been better for them. Not necessarily a play that would change the game, but I think that was a better play still. We just get some repositioning here from DarkScyther, and I actually really like this. They are seeing that they only have like 2 hexes they can stand on, which are these 2, where they can hit enemies from, so they don't really have a need for the Ginsting to be near there. So they are instead moving their 1 key and the snowball up, so that the 1 key can take the middle point and the snowball can participate in combat if it needs to. And they're moving the Ginsting down here to defend this point down here from the Murder Wing, which makes a ton of sense. That way you are kind of making use of the Ginsting where it otherwise would just be like in the way for you positioning. Like, it would be hard to position in a good way, because if you put anything near here, it's probably getting pushed in. You can maybe like place it here, but it's very risky because they can probably like push around and find a way to get over here and push you in, so you're not going to be doing that. And we also just saw them bank. There was no unit summoned or anything. We just see Kakashi pull a little bit back here. They are just making sure that there's no like things getting pushed in with the stabby, and they don't want their phobies grouped in a way where it becomes easy for DarkScyther to actually attack. I think they maybe pulled a bit further back than they needed to, but it doesn't really matter. It's fine either way. The Murder Wing could maybe be here, and the Hero 2.0 could maybe sit further forward, but again, doesn't really matter too much. And now we just get a bunch of 1 key trading, which is something that players usually do when they are banking a lot of keys. Normally you don't really need to do this. You preserve a little bit of health from doing it, and you also make the opponent spend 1 keys. Generally speaking, I don't think trading 1 keys is a good thing for you. It's usually like a neutral or bad thing when you're doing that, because it means you are in a bad spot, but the opponent is also in a spot where they don't believe they can do something. There is like a saying, or not a saying, but something that some players are saying at higher ranks, which is, if you are trading 1 keys, 1 player is making a mistake, because 1 player should be able to do something when the other can't. Unless the map is terrible, of course, but then you still shouldn't be trading 1 keys. You should just create like a super powerful board and then overwhelm the opponent in 1 or 2 big turns. So it's still wrong to do even there. So that's why they say, if both players are trading their 1 keys back and forth, 1 player is doing something wrong. But it's still something that happens fairly frequently, because not everyone, like, we're not going to be playing perfectly, and it's a fairly good way to stall out the game without taking too much damage. You also drain the opponent's resources a bit, so maybe you have an idea of a specific couple phobies that you want to go for, and you are just like reducing the opponent's options a little bit by trading 1 keys. That can maybe make it an argument for that being okay, but again, I still don't think it's necessarily a good thing to be doing. But you do it while banking, and we can now see that DarkScyther has banked a lot of keys, so they have a lot of options to them here. they are kind of in a spot where they have to be the one that like goes in or brings the next biggest phobia now, because Kakashi brought a Phantom, which is a phobia that is very good for breaking stalemates and can do a lot of very nasty things. You could teleport your Hero 2.0 in to do a big push play. You could bring in a Rampolina maybe with that to do like a ton of pushing. You could bring in a Kaboom to just blow the opponent up with a nuke. You could also bring in Blondie, which we will actually see this game as a phobia that can maybe debuff all of the enemy team. You could also bring in a Hero 3.0 with a Cupcake or a Gonzo Bonzo to do like a very big attack on the enemy with AoE, and having you would have a very powerful phobia after that. You would set them all on fire too and stuff like that. Could also bring Boss and then do a big fire attack and move back. There's a lot of different options with this phobia, but it's very, very strong and it's very good for breaking stalemates. So you are kind of forced to do something now as DarkScyther, because otherwise the opponent is just going to build a board that can insta-kill all of your board, which you can't really let them do, obviously. Or it will debuff their entire board, depending on like whether they go for a damage path or something like a Blondie or maybe a Glob or whatever. So I think the Phantom makes a lot of sense here. And we're just seeing some more 1-key trading. And here comes the Blondie. Get a Rusty in here, which is very good, and I believe we get a Heartbreaker. So the reason why the Rusty is actually very, very nice here is because it can lock down this Blondie. So if the Blondie goes in here, you just lock it down with the Rusty and you stand in a circle around it and you just wail on the Blondie until it dies, or you use the Heartbreaker to drop it into the abyss, because now they have the Heartbreaker. The Heartbreaker is very good because it kind of forces the opponent to go in on this specific turn, or they cannot go in again for a very long time, and they're going to have to try and make some play to stop this high five, because otherwise the high five will probably, or not high five, the Heartbreaker, I keep on saying high five instead, the Heartbreaker would find a way to drop either your Blondie or your Hero 2.0 into an abyss with like maybe a push, or they just move forward slowly. So you're kind of forced to fight here, but at the same time this will stop you if you're trying to fight, so that's a pretty awkward position for Kakashi to be in. Now we just see this Henrietta be killed. And I believe they bring a Leprechaun here while moving slowly forward. Yep, that's what we are seeing. And I think this is a big mistake, to be honest. The reason why this is a mistake is because this Leprechaun is very unlikely to ever connect with this Heartbreaker without having to use the Phantom ability on it. And if you use the Phantom ability on it, well, then the Blondie isn't going anywhere. It's at least going somewhere very, very slowly. And then it's just going to get locked down by the Rusty without being able to do anything. Always. Like, that's always going to happen then. So you can't really use the Leprechaun with the Phantom or the Le Shovel. And if you don't do that, it's way too slow to ever get to the high five without just being insta-killed somehow, or the high five getting it, or I keep on saying high five, Heartbreaker getting its ability online so it can pull the enemy into the pit. So I think this is a big misplay. I don't think that makes sense as a counter. It's kind of probably felt like the only option they had. But what I believe they should have done is they should have gone full aggression on this turn. This is the one turn where Heartbreaker cannot do anything because it's still on one turn lock. So it's not going to be able to pull an enemy into an abyss on this specific turn. So what I think they should have done is they should have killed this Henrietta. Then they should have pushed their Blondie forward. They should have moved up here with the Phantom, pulled the Blondie in, moved in to here, and just instantly, like, put a debuff on as many of the opponent's phobias as they could, which would be the Hero 2.0, the Stabby, and the Heartbreaker. And then you should have gone very aggressively with all of your other phobias, tried to move them up in ways where they would be dangerous to them. So that's what I think should have happened here. They could probably have done something where they like move the Hero 2.0 forward to around here, and like not put it in any like spot where it can be pushed in. Then they put the Murder Wing next to it, or they put the Murder Wing down here. Either one would probably be fine. Then they put a 1 key behind this Blondie, or just a large phobie behind this Blondie, and then they push on this and they move forward with the shovel. Then they pull it in here and they do the big debuff, and they can like move the stabby forward maybe in some way. Probably maybe go up here or go down here somewhere, or it would just double hit here, and then they would have another phobie that they also bring in. Alternatively, they could just move the shovel down here, push this forward, do the whole play that I talked about, and then they could bring a large phobie alongside that. They could bring the Frosty, or they could bring Mr. Trambles if they want to be really aggressive. Maybe a boss or a Beauty would be very good because it can't be thrown into a pit and it does a ton of damage. They just need something fairly fast with a lot of attack power, essentially, because they should just be trying to rush the opponent at this point. And then they like have the Blondie in here and they're just trying to overwhelm the opponent on that turn. I think that's the only option they really had on that turn that would have been really good, or like at least decent, but they end up going for the Leprechaun instead, which I think is a little bit of a weird play. What we see from DarkScyther here is a also very interesting and actually very good, in my opinion, phobie choice. He is going for a Russell, and Russell is very good because let's count dimensionals: 1, 2, 3 dimensionals, a small undead and a small monster, and they are unit locked. There are 7 phobies here, so they cannot bring another phobie. And due to this, these cannot be healed. So these will just die if you get too blunt or use the ability and just sit back and do nothing with the Russell. So, and then you would obviously just insta-win if all of those phobies dies. That would be a huge amount of value. But the reason why that is so good is because this says you have to go in and fight me. There is no other choice. If you don't go in and fight me, you will just lose the game, right? But at the same time, you have a High Five, a Rusty, and a Hero 2.0, excuse me, a Heartbreaker, not a High Five. I don't know why I have High Five in my brain. It's because I watched some replays with High Five recently, but Heartbreaker and the Hero 2.0 and the Rusty would all say you can't go in. Because if you go in here with the Hero 2.0, you risk being pushed into bad spots. The Heartbreaker can obviously take a big phobia and drop it directly into the Abyss. And the Rusty will lock down your Blondie. So those are just like very scary options. So at the same time, you have a phobia that is saying you have to go in, and you have several other phobies that say you can't go in or I will be doing some very bad stuff to you. So you are kind of in a very awkward position where you both need to go in and you need the opponent to go in for you to have a chance. So you can't do both, obviously. They're opposite things. So that makes it very hard for the opponent to like, what do you want to call it, like find a good position for their phobies or find a good path forward. What Kakashi ends up doing here is he ends up bringing the Leprechaun forward and turning off the Heartbreaker, because that is pretty much the only thing they could do here to stop the Heartbreaker. But that also means that they just straight up lose the Leprechaun and they have to use both the Phantom and the Shuffle abilities, which is obviously very bad for them. And they can't even bring their Blondie far forward. Then they bring these down here like as aggressive phobies to fight at the same time. And this is kind of a okay turn, I guess. This is kind of like one of the two things they could have done. The other thing would be just like let your Blondie die, essentially, which is not great. And the other thing again would be to turn the Russell off. But both of those things have very big problems. The big problem with just letting the Blondie die is obviously you don't want your Blondie to just have done nothing. You would just like get to turn these two off and you would not get any value out of it, which is obviously not good at all. And you don't really have the ability to go in with your other phobies because slow phobie, it's not gonna work. So that option is kind of off the table. You're not going to be able to blondie here in any way. So if we turn the Rustle off instead, we will end up seeing the Leprechaun die. The Heartbreaker will still be threatening and can now move forward because there isn't a Leprechaun to stop it. And you will have used your Phantom ability, so you can't use that with the blondie. And the Rustle will just come up back again. So DarkScyther will just sit back here and threaten with the high five until they can use the Rustle again. And you would be in a very bad position again in a couple turns. Essentially the same position, just without a Leprechaun. So that doesn't really work either. So they're kind of forced to turn off this Heartbreaker. But the bad thing about that is now the Rustle is going off, so you are getting poisoned on a lot of your phobies. And in addition to that, the Leprechaun is just dying for free. So you have to go in with your other phobies somehow. And you didn't even kill anything or like do anything super threatening to the opponent on that turn really. Because they are still in a pretty good spot. But yeah, they ended up doing that option because it was just the best thing you could do. The other options were no-goes. And they move forward with everything that they can at the same time. We obviously see the Leprechaun being killed here. I believe they move in with the Murderwing to hit the Rusty, which is just a panic play because the Murderwing is dying now. It's like on borrowed time, so you're kind of forced to go in and hit things with it. They should probably just like have done a normal attack with it, but it doesn't really matter because it dies. And then you see the Stabby move forward to take a point and hit the enemy a bit. And the Phantom is moving up here because it's not really threatened. DarkScyther should probably have positioned a bit differently from what they did here. I think the Rustle should have been here or maybe even here instead. And then the Snowball could have sat here. That way this Rustle would have been in range of the enemies. And maybe the Ginseng should maybe even have been one down. Because now what this allows the Kakashi to do is he puts the Phantom up here and it can't actually die here. I mean it can, but then the Stabby wouldn't die. So if you double hit here and then move forward with this and hit here, then this would die, I believe. No, because this doesn't have the ability, so you would have to bring in these two and hit it. Like you bring in the Ginseng and you double hit with all of these, then you kill this with like nothing because you can't. Like, you wouldn't have an ability to kill this, but you kill this with the poison, I guess, is what I mean, on the following turn. But then you're taking a ton of damage, so that is not very good for you either. So them being able to put the Phantom up here is actually very scary for you, because it can now move in next turn and start hitting you. It's in a very good position to be aggressive. So that's why I think they should maybe have positioned a little bit better here on this turn. That's a small mistake, though. That kind of matters a bit, but not too much. And also I should mention they are bringing in a Noxious here. Noxious is a extremely good choice here in my opinion, because let's just count phobies that it can hit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phobies that really don't want to be poisoned. Now DarkScyther still has 1 key left, so he can bring a Muffin to like kind of remove some of that poison on one of his phobies. But that's still going to be a very strong phobie here. It's probably the best phobie he could bring at this point in the game, I would say. It's a very, very, very good choice. Especially because he has a Hevo 2.0 to set up the poison, and he even has a shovel. So that should be a very good choice here. We see the Murderwing just die, and now the Stabby obviously dies. You kind of have to kill the Stabby somehow. And they're just letting their phobie get poisoned at this point. Like, it looked like the Stabby was just going to die, but they're actually going to push them in here and do a big grouping, then poison all of that. What they could have done differently here is they could have tried to find a way to put their Stabby on this point, and then maybe spread out these phobies a little bit differently. Now, the way of doing that is very questionable though, because you end up still grouping up your phobies. What you could have done is you could have moved the Stabby 1 turn tile forward here. Then you could have moved the Ginseng in. You would have hit with the Ginseng, hit with the hero 2.0 twice and then hit with the stabby, and that would kill their stabby and put your stabby on the point. So you would end up with your Jinsting here, stabby on this point, and the hero still being here. And then you could position your other phobies around that so that you don't get AoE poisoned as badly, which would probably be like putting the Russell here with the snowball all the way back here or something like that. And then you could maybe prevent the poisoning. You could take the middle point at the same time so that you don't end up taking too much hard damage. And I think that would have been a bit better, but that's also a hard like choice to make in the middle of a match. So I don't really blame them for this. I think they are positioning their Russell a little bit too defensively here though. Like in this game. Okay, we already watched this turn. But what we end up seeing here is Kakashi essentially does a very, very, very good turn here. I think so far in this game, up until this turn, DarkScyther was kind of in the better spot. Like he is in a spot where he has a counter to the Blondie. He can fight the Hero 2.0 on like fairly equal terms because he has his own and he has some good stuff against it. The Heartbreaker is coming up again in 2 turns. This is up in 3 turns and he can just kind of stall the game out. The Blondie is not in a position to fight. So he was in a pretty good position, but this turn is what turns it all around because of this like positioning here that allows Kakashi to just do a very powerful big poison. And this is what essentially like turns the entire game around and puts it in Kakashi's favor. Because we see now that the Noxious gets pushed in and we just get a massive AoE poison. As you can see, this is already a lot of damage. If we don't even look at the poison, right? Like this is a ton of damage. This is more than 2000 damage. It's almost 2500 damage spread across multiple phobies, and the poison is extremely good. The reason why this poison is very good is because first of all, you can only bring a 1 key to heal here, and it's also just on a lot of phobies, but it will kill the stabby and the snowball without them getting their undeath effects, which is just very, very good because you are avoiding so much damage that way. And they are kind of forced to bring the Muffin out to heal this Russell. So this just makes a very, very powerful turn. Like this completely changes the state of the game here. Because now suddenly DarkScyther is on a clock, where until now it was Kakashi that was on a clock. And he is kind of forced at this point to rely on the Heartbreaker entirely, but that's going to be a little bit hard to do with a Hero 2.0 in here. They sacrifice the Snowball, which is smart, because then they can bring a Muffin out here, as we see, to heal the Russell. Also, did they even hit something with the Jinsting? Yeah, they did up here, I think. So yeah, they did use the Jinsting. But now we see the Stabby and the Snowball are both dead because of that poison. This is going to be nearly dead because of the poison too. And you had to use your last heal, so that is rather bad for you. In addition to that, like, you are just in a position where the opponent can kind of fight you. This is just going to walk up and get a free hit on the Russell, which is rather bad. So you're not in a very happy spot right here. And the Heartbreaker is kind of still waiting to be usable. Now we just see Kakashi move forward, and that is because DarkScyther can't really fight this Blondie right now with where it is. Like, if this just moves in here and like either fights him or puts a power down on all of his phobies, then it's very hard to win the game. And this just got a free hit in because of that. Like, you can't fight, so this hit was just completely free. There's also a Rusty down here that could lock down this Russell if it tries to fight. So it's very, very dangerous. You're basically forced to back off and just wait for your Heartbreaker to come out. And this is also a turn that I think is pretty bad from DarkScyther. He ends up putting his phobies in a way that, like, positioning them in a way that is not that great in my opinion. The reason why this is not that great is because they are just a little bit too far back, and you're sacrificing something to take this middle point without being able to really defend it. Like if they just take this middle point with either the Rusty or the Sargassum, what are you going to do? Are you going to walk up and hit this, or are you going to pull it in? You can't really do either of those things. Those are both very, very bad for you. So this is kind of just being thrown away for no reason. I think this should probably have taken this point instead at the very least, or it should just not have taken a point and sat back somewhere in here, because they don't actually have an AoE to kill it with, so it could still do something. In addition to that, the Russell is in a spot that is way too defensive. Like this right here just doesn't really do anything. Like it's a melee phobia and it's so far away from the combat up here. I think it should have been sitting up here maybe or something. That would have made some sense to me if they had done that. Like if it just sat maybe here or here, it would still be able to fight. And yes, it would maybe get debuffed by this, but if this walks forward and debuffs, you will drop it in. So that's fairly easy. Or you would just like run away from it and throw up the Hero 2.0 in. So I think sacrificing the Rusty is kind of weird here, and the positioning is a little bit off on these phobies. So now we see that Kakashi is just taking both points, because like I said before, how are you going to respond to this? You don't have phobies that can actually fight them in range, because the Jin Sting is too far back. The Jin Sting should maybe have been here, but again, they didn't want to be powered down across the board, so that's why they put it there. It's very bad for you though. Now they are kind of forced to do something, so they end up dropping the Blondie, or not, yeah, the Blondie in. This is of course at a very big cost though, because when you do this, you end up losing your, well, you'll see, you end up losing your Heartbreaker. The reason why that happens is because you can just push as Kakashi here, you can just push on the Hero 2.0 and the Heartbreaker is dead. And you're not even in range of any enemy phobies either. They also got a poison on the Russell, which is very nice. So this is just very, very bad for them. And they lock this down. So now they have a ton of panic points. They killed your most important phobia, in my opinion. They locked down this phobia so it's not able to fight right now, which allows you to like position next turn to kill this. These phobies are like, this is very low health and this is taking poison damage, so it's going to die in a couple turns. So you are just in a position where you can't really do much here because of the positioning that you did, which is what ends up losing them the game here at the end. We see another Russell ability to just poison the shovel, which isn't too big a deal in my opinion. I would even say that's probably not a good choice, but they didn't really have any good choice here, because they are just going to die. You can see the shovel died for free, but it doesn't matter because the opponent doesn't have the ability to fight you anymore. This Russell is dying on its own this very turn. This is one hit and this is 2 hits. So you can't really find a way to kill this ever, because if you walk up with this to hit it, it will just insta-die, and the same with this. If you walk up with both of them, he will just kill one and the other can't do anything. So you're never going to be in a position where you can actually win this game by now. Especially because you couldn't even take a point here. So you're going to die from hard damage. Kakashi doesn't even really need to fight you. They can just force you to walk to a panic point and then they will kill one of your phobies. This ended up being a lot closer than it probably had to be. But I think honestly that DarkScyther should have won this game from just like looking at the early game of this. It was like the later stage positional errors that kind of ended up costing them everything here in the game. But still a very, very close game. And it's dead, and the game is obviously over. If we just go back to this turn where they dropped the Blondie in. This is fairly far back. But you can see here, if there was some other way that they could have like targeted the Hero 2.0 instead by having the Heartbreaker further out or something, that would have done a lot for their game plan. They could have also tried to position in a way where they could kill either of these 1 keys and maybe take a point back somehow, and that would have helped a lot. at this point, their only win condition is dropping the Hero 2.0 into a pit, because you can't be fighting this Hero 2.0 in any other way. And then once you've done that, if you manage to do that, you can kind of rely on this just being slow and just wait for the cooldown on this to do the same thing to the Blondie. But you have to drop the Hero 2.0 in, because these phobies aren't really in a spot where they can actually fight the Hero 2.0 in any way, without also having to fight the Blondie in a melee, which you don't win ever. Also, the Russell ending up getting poisoned here on this turn is very, very bad for you, obviously, because this could maybe have fought off the Hero 2.0, but now it can't because it's poisoned. So that should have been one further back. Let's be honest, that's also a small mistake. If this had sat here, you would have been able to still kill the Blondie. This wouldn't have been able to poison anything. So it would just have had to back off, and then maybe next turn you could like walk into the middle with this and just hard commit you with your Hero 2.0 and your Jin Sting. And maybe there would have been some way, probably not, but that would at least have given you some chance. This is just like very bad, because this getting poisoned is pretty much game over. But this getting like pushed into the abyss is also game over, so either way it's game over. Could have maybe tried to put the Hero 2.0 in a different spot too, so that this wouldn't be pushed in. Because like if they had put the Hero 2.0 like right here instead, then you wouldn't have been able to push on it to kill this, and they would have had to move their Hero 2.0 over here, push it forward, and then push. And I'm not even sure that would have worked. Maybe that would have worked. I can't remember the pushing mechanic, but like it would have been a lot harder to do by just moving the Hero 2.0 one step up. Either way though, this was a fairly good game, and it ended up being a very close game, but I think it showed a lot of different ideas here, which were stuff like when you can open with Snowball, how you would like respond to it. Hero 2.0 being very good with Abyss tiles. We saw it from both players here. That's how good it is. We saw how Russell and Heartbreaker with also Rusty and some other like anti-go-in stuff or anti-engage stuff can work very well together. That is often what you want to do with Russell. You want something that like disencourages the opponent from going in, because then they end up being in a weird spot where they both have to go in and they have to stay away, and like that makes a lot of sense. We also saw all of the like phantom stuff over here, which is very common, and the shovel from Kakashi, so it showed off a lot of the very used phobies here and some of the specialized phobies for this map too. So I think this was a pretty good replay for the first one. Anyways, that was all I had for this game, so I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.